right. Today on this episode of Growth Science, we're lucky enough to be with Andy Weiss, who is CMO of Ceipal. Welcome, Andy. I'm really excited. I've worked with Andy in the past, and as typical, when I start these, I like to think of some words that really come to mind. And when I think about my time with Andy, he's a great leader, and he works to get the most from his team. And so I'm really excited to hear what he has to say today around the best ways to grow a company. And so, Andy, maybe we get started. You got to share a little bit about yourself, your path to your current position.
Yeah. So thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to join you in this conversation. And the best way to think about me. So I'm a marketer by trade. Grew up first part of my career started on the agency side. Latter half has been on the client side of the equation, and my shtick, my success has come from bringing together what I like to call brand storytelling along with demand generation. And as a marketer, I like to kind of tell stories. And so the origin for me on that is one of the houses that I grew up in. My dad had a darkroom, and I became a photo buff because of being around my dad and his amateur photography love as well. And for me, photography kind of has two parts or two components. The first part is kind of capturing the image and what's in the frame, what's not in the frame, the perspective. Are you low? Are you high? Is it wide angle? Is it portrait? Is it landscape? And so all of that is kind of capturing the image. But when you're done with capturing that image, you're not really finished. Back in the day, it was we were dealing with film and 35 millimeter or whatever, and you'd go into a darkroom and you'd process it with chemicals and expose it to light and dodge and burn and do all kinds of things and print the photo. And then in this day and age, it's digital or increasingly AI. But at the end of those two pieces, I could hand you a photo, and we would, it's a finished story. It's a finished, a finished image, and hopefully you love it. And we talk about it and all kinds of cool things. The brand part, the image capture is kind of like the brand storytelling. Mm-hmm. And the image processing is kind of like that demand generation piece. And without the two components in photography, you don't have a finished image. In the world of business, you don't have bottom line results. So we're stacking those two things and bringing them together to drive growth. And that's where, bringing those two things together has helped me drive growth for a number of businesses in a number of different categories, and what I was brought on board at Ceipal to do. And just a quick note on Ceipal, it's been around for several years. It's a SaaS platform in the talent software space. We're in IT and engineering staffing right now, and we're expanding to a couple other verticals. And what drew me to this business was the founder and the founder's story. And I think that's kind of really cool and for a marketer, a great foundation for growing an organization. So I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about that kind of through the rest of our conversation. But that's kind of what brings me to Ceipal and what I've been up to since you and I worked together last.
Cool. In one of my previous interviews, someone had worked as a consultant, and she thought that background was like very beneficial. Do you see any benefits from coming from an agency background in like to an in-house role?
Yeah, I think one, there's this adage of you need to have industry experience. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that agency life taught me is being able to dissect and understand an industry or a category quickly, and what are the drivers has helped me immensely. And there's some key tenets in terms of how different business models work, how different industries work. And if you can get down to the core of those pieces and components, you can figure out how the puzzle comes together. And that perspective of being an outsider or being a consultant or being an agency person and coming into that category with fresh eyes and knowing what the fundamentals are, that's a great platform for being
Right.
able to accelerate. So I wholeheartedly agree with your previous guest.
No, that's great. That's great. What and so you've had a variety of different experiences. Based on your experiences, what do you think are some of the keys for growing a company?
Um, what I've found in multitude of categories, and it's not just kind of being on the client side, but it's also in the agency world as well, is you could have a great product, you can have
Hmm.
the best product in the world, but if you can't communicate
Right.
what it does, you're not going to sell one instance
Hmm.
of these. And so like having that insight, that information, and being able to communicate what that product or service does is job one. The second piece, I think, is business and marketing are kind of like have some physics components to them. And what I mean by that is um, the energy and friction. So from an energy standpoint, how much bandwidth, how much energy does it take for me to understand your product or service?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Particularly the B2B side, but also on the consumer side, like where does it fit in my world? And if it's too complicated for me to figure out, then I'm not going to waste my time.
Right.
Number one. And then so that's the energy part. If I'm burning too much energy to figure it out, I'm moving on. The second piece is around friction. How easy or is it hard to interact with you to whether it's the sales process, whether it's the customer support or the onboarding, or even in if it's a SaaS business, each component in your platform, or understand your offer. So if there's too many pieces, too much friction, then I'm going to move on. So from a growth standpoint, it's those bring those three things together. It's communicating what you do. It's not making it hard. I don't, the less energy I need to burn, the better. And then minimizing those friction pieces
Right.
throughout your experience. And if you get those right, then you've got a path for growth.
Right. 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 No, that's great. That's great. Well, and so now you've worked with both founder-led companies, and I think where a CEO has been brought into the companies. What do you see as some of the benefits from the founder-led, company situation like that versus, bringing some externally?
Um, I think for me, like going back to like where my DNA and that storytelling piece,
Right.
um, in a founder-led organization, it's easier to get to that origin story.
Right.
Number
Okay.
one.
Yeah.
Number two, you have somebody that can personify and tell that origin story.
Mhm.
In an organization where the CEO is brought in or the CEO is not the founder, you can still tell that origin story, but it's a little bit more manufactured. It might not, and so what you need to do in those organizations is you need to help the CEO find a voice
Right.
that aligns with that brand and that origin piece. And so it requires a little bit more work, but both are still assets. And where I've evolved is really leaning into leveraging the entire C-suite in the role of telling that, or being marketing assets for the organization. Because in the consumer world, we buy based off of referrals and what our friends and family and other people that we know kind of recommend to us. The B2B world is the same. Just because you walked in this morning and you went to work, you didn't put your business hat on and
Right.
completely change how you buy and how you interact. No, if you're looking for a new project management tool for what you're doing at Mosaic, you're going to talk to other folks that what are they using? Are they how's that work? What's your real experience with that product or service like? And you're going to do a lot of homework before you even you engage with that company. And so it's the people side, and that CEO founder or that CEO that was brought in needs to be a part of telling that story. And if we can leverage the CMO, the CRO, the other folks in that C-suite, and even on further down, then the brand benefits from all of that. So it's long-winded answer to your short question, but I think both are assets to the process.
I think that's a great insight, really. I mean, I think leveraging the C-suite and really telling the origin story or telling the story of the organization is so important, because it's still people buying. I mean, even in B2B SaaS, it's still people buying the software. Like, they need to know that they want to know who they're doing business with. They're trying to minimize their risk. They're trying to do their job successfully. And so having a better understanding of this relationship is really important for them in making that decision. It's not just like you're not buying a piece of gum. It's like, this is something that's really impactful in your career, and a failure to understand that, I think, can be really detrimental to be able to growing your business.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure the variety of clients that you work with, there's a lot of parallels from that standpoint. You see it a number of times. Like, I mean, from your standpoint, what's your experience in founders versus CEOs?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we definitely see that if you have, I mean, the founders obviously are typically very passionate about their company. And so if they sit down with a prospect one-on-one, they have a good chance to be able to sell them, because they know everything about it. They're able to articulate it. They have this passion. People want to tie into that passion. It's like, this person's so excited about it, there must be something great about it. And so I think that's a really powerful mechanism to try to spread the word and sell your product. I do think there is a negative to that, though, is sometimes they know their product too well, or it's too close to them. So people lose the message if they're too in the weeds on it. I also think I've seen situations where founders want to solve, they're so proud of their product, it's like their kid. They want to solve every problem for their clients, or like they don't want to hear that people are disappointed in their product. And so they can get spread too thin in terms of like the product they're trying to develop. And so I think that can be a challenge as well. And then I think there's I mean, I think typically there's some, depending on who the founder is, but many times we've seen, just like in terms of like foundational best practices, the business is really grown by the passion of the founder. But some of the things that you and I would probably look for may not exist. Like, like, what does the reporting look like? It may not be as locked down as you would typically see. And so or it could be, even like their organizational structure. It may not be the way that you would, as a consultant, come in and say, this is how I design the organization. It may not look exactly like that. Obviously, it's been successful from the organizations that we work with, but it's some things that you would see that would not be that would not be exactly best practice at times.
Yeah, and I think it's adding to that. It's there are two things that you need to navigate with the founder, and that's one, keeping them on point with what that message is, because related to that, they don't want to hear no. So I want to solve, if you're the prospect and I'm walking you through how I think my platform can solve your problem, and you've got some objections, I'm naturally, as the founder, not going to want to hear the no. Right. I'm going to want to solve for that, and solving for your particular challenge might help me close business for you, but it's not necessarily going to be scalable for everybody else. And so how do you ensure that you're doing your solves are for the masses or for in a scalable fashion, and not just a bunch of one-offs, and then you've got this fragmented portfolio of customers that, oh, by the way, yes, you've got 1,000 customers, great, looks wonderful on paper, but you've created a horrible customer support and service challenge, that, the CS team and marketing needs to figure out how we keep all these folks happy so we're not churning them off the back end. So
Yeah, no, totally, I get that. So what you talked about, obviously messaging and be able to articulate what you do, why you do it well as a key to success. What would you say, based on your experience with different organizations, could cause, a company not to grow, could cause a company to not necessarily completely fail, but not be successful?
So there's a couple things, and I think, but the resounding piece is not having a clear vision and not being able to communicate that vision internally, and then being committed to it. And I think we're seeing that now. We've seen it over the last couple of years, and depending on how long you've been around, you've kind of been through a couple of these different inflection points where it's either headwinds or larger macroeconomic influences where they drag on a business. And it's one thing to grow a business when times are good. It's easy.
Right.
There's stupid money. People are buying and everything looks rosy.
Right.
But if there was a organization that I worked with years ago during an economic downturn, and I thought, hey, I was walking into a role where I knew what was going on,
Right.
and this is who our ICP is, and it was the head of procurement or the procurement manager in our target customers. And then as soon as I walked in, the economy changed.
Right.
And the buying decisions and what a procurement manager could sign off on went from, they used to be able to sign off at a $10,000 threshold, or no, 50,000, and then it lowered to 10,000, and anything north of 10,000, it went up to the C-suite, because everyone was looking over their shoulder and wanting to manage their risk and their cash flow, and the CFO wanted to have oversight. And the difference between having the CFO be your key decision maker and having a head of procurement or a procurement manager sign off is completely different. And it flipped our business overnight. And we were not able to survive that for a number of different reasons.
Right.
In other organizations that I've been in, we've continued to grow or be successful because we were focused on, one, that vision piece, and then secondarily what those fundamentals were, and understanding that economies are going to go, we're going to have, and industries are going to have some ebbs and flows. But if you know what your fundamentals are, and we haven't talked about data yet, but those KPIs and that data piece are key to understanding what your fundamentals are. And then having that vision, and that vision is going to help you ride through and flatten out some of those waves. And so, what doesn't keep a company from growing, or what gets in the way, is not being able to see the forest through the trees and say, hey, we're facing some economic difficulties here, or our business is slow. Do we truly believe in what we're doing and what's potentially on the other side? And we're going to drive through that and zig when our competitors are zagging, and potentially come out on the back end in a better place.
Right. No, that's great. And obviously we talk a lot about marketing, but that was actually a really great insight I had not thought about before about the stakeholders involved in making a decision in a downturn. It's like, you're right. But I mean, as soon as you said it, I'm like, yeah, that's right. Like the CEO is getting brought in on things that he never would have, or she would have never seen before. And now it's like, but that changes the way that you're selling to them, because you're gonna have this other person involved in the decision making cycle, and their concerns are gonna be about making sure they see like a positive ROI quickly. I mean, it's just that it completely changes the way that you're
Yeah.
selling, because you're bringing this additional person who has the ultimate authority at the end of the day.
Yeah. Why do they care? Why do like, you know, it's a difference of like your more junior buyer might you might want to make them a hero,
Right,
but your CEO or your CFO cares more about the bottom line of the organization and what's the trade-off. And that's a completely different conversation that your sales team is having, or even your customer support folks are having, trying to retain customers.
right,
And like some of the conversations that I've had over the last couple of years in different organizations are, um, how do you partner with and be an ally with your current customers? They're going to experience some of that same ebbs and flows. How do you continue to maintain the value and the perception of value of what you're selling, number one, and number two, ensure that you can help them ride out that storm? Because if you're able to do that and keep them as a customer, the value you have to them at the back end is exponential.
right.
By example, it's an organization that I was heading up marketing for, a company called Ungerbach in the event software space, and global organization. Think of it like the ERP system of events and venues. COVID hits. We have some global user conferences that were slated to start, or one in EMEA or one in APAC, like the week after the world shut down, and 2 weeks after. We flipped those to be, instead of being in person, to virtual overnight. And then the next thing we did was we said, hey, our industry doesn't know how to respond to what's going on. What if we used now our virtual platform to start standing up some town halls, and
Interesting.
not just for our customers, but also just anyone in the industry, and let's invite our association partners to that. And so there was this void of, what do we do? And we found a way to fill that. And we didn't have all the answers, but we provided a forum.
Right.
And the industry associations kind of drafted off of that playbook. The one thing that we did in that was simply putting ourselves out there, providing this forum. It built such goodwill in the space that Ungerbach, even as people weren't having shows and venues and filling their arenas with audiences, we stayed profitable through
Wow.
COVID.
It's a great story.
And it was because just simply filling that void and investing in goodwill, and not, if I had to build a spreadsheet to say, here's what's the ROI of our town
Right,
hall,
right, yeah.
we would not have done it, because I'd still be building out that spreadsheet.
Right, yeah.
But being able to kind of, Chris Walker talks about kind of the dark social and kind of evaluating those intangible things. This was one of those massive intangible things that if we went back and kind of tried to measure it, it would cascade down into retaining customers and bringing new folks in. But it's just one of those little things that, like, you got to be open to understanding what's going on around you and zigging.
Right. Yeah, totally. And one thing I want to touch upon was you talking about the lack of a vision. And it's interesting, like when you think about typically when your vision, and maybe it's because we were coming out of good times, you think about this like aspirational thing. What we're seeing a lot now is vision as a way of making sure that you're more efficient, because like we'll see instances where people aren't aligned and the organization may say, oh, what we're going to do is adopt a product-led growth strategy, but they don't get people aligned around that vision. And so then you go to product and say, hey, we're doing product-led growth. They're like, that's not my, I wasn't ever told that was our vision. I was never told. And so it's just a bunch of wasted time because people are investing all this time saying we're doing this product-led growth, but not everyone's aligned. So it's like very inefficient without an effective vision.
Well, and so I want to unpack that particular approach to vision. I think vision needs to be unique to your organization. When I'm talking about vision, it's what do we want to be when we grow up?
Right.
And so what do we look like in 3 to 5 years? What's it like to interact with us? What is it like to, unbox our service? What's it like for somebody to, to use our platform any number of ways, but it's unique to your organization. If your vision is tied to, let's say, product-led growth or AI or something, those are bright, shiny objects. And the challenge for organizations like that is you're constantly chasing that bright, shiny object. Years ago, it was Facebook. Then it was, hey, we need an app. We need to be part of the app economy. Then it was, hey, we're a Web3 company. Now we're an AI company. We're PLG led. Like it's those visions, those those bright, shiny objects lack the substance that provides the guidance that helps you navigate through and allow people to rally around things. Those are potentially frameworks, or those are approaches. And it's not to say that you shouldn't grab those, but weave it into the fundamentals of your business. And why do I care? Why do I care that you have Web3? Well, is it the tokenization of your platform and it makes it meaningful and relevant, and then you're able to hold something up? Or is it, AI, and does it help our customers do something better, smarter, faster, kind of thing?
Yeah, no,
then it's meaningful.
Right. Yeah. And I think the event example that you brought up is great. I mean, that would tie close, like, and I don't know specifically what your vision was, but that you did have this vision, say we're going to enable people to be successful with events, regardless whether it's a physical event or virtual. I mean, it could tie very nicely with what you're in, and that's how your brand and will resonate with the customers, because you're doing what it takes to be successful, regardless of channel or format. Like you have this vision of what needs to happen.
Yeah, it's your North Star.
Right.
And it's like, it may take a while to get there, but you continue to hold it up and say, this is what we want to be. And it helps you decide, is something in or out from a product standpoint, from a service standpoint? Do we want to get involved in this charity, that charity? Is this how we want to approach, our working or our cultural environment and stuff?
Right. Exactly. Is there anything that surprised you, that's gone against like conventional wisdom, any sort of lesson you've learned that you would feel like you may not see in the marketing textbook in college, but that's held true for you?
This bright shiny object conversation, I think it has surprised me how many organizations throughout my career have chased the bright shiny object. And I think that there's in a marketing textbook, in a business text, like there's we're all chasing the next thing. And it's like there's the stories about the folks that there's great stories about the folks that have been successful, but we hold them up to be that bright shiny thing, and they're the unicorns, and we can't all be that. And so it's the in the organizations that I've worked with and been a part of, it's trying to peel back those layers and say, hey, what's our true vision, and what are our fundamentals? And let's not chase this other thing, because that's not sustainable. And that's the thing that continues to surprise me.
Right, right,
And like, one of the things that has been encouraging about, my current organization, Ceipal, is we said we had to, how we came up through in our origin story. Our founder was in the staffing world and said, hey, I don't like the platforms that are out there. There's
right,
got to be a better mousetrap. And so he went and built a platform, and deconstructed, kind of like Dyson, said, hey, all, vacuum cleaners suck. And I'm not going to build a vacuum cleaner like everybody else. I'm going to build a better mousetrap. That's what we've done with our platform. And when it came to the bright shiny object of AI, we didn't go and say, hey, we're just going to, throw AI in the mix.
right,
It's, where does it make sense? And
right,
we're
right,
going to do it in an informed fashion, where in our customers' workflows, AI fits in there, and there's a reason for it. And
right,
but like, you probably don't recognize where that AI is
right, right, right,
embedded, but it makes it a better process for
right,
you.
right.
And I think those are the companies, those are the organizations that are going to continue to have success, because going back to, some of our other themes about having that vision and understanding the fundamentals and not chasing that next thing, that's where you're going to continue to grow, and where you're not going to run into those economic or growth inhibiting brick
Right.
walls.
That's a great point. I mean, obviously, if you spend any time looking at the space, you see AI everywhere right now. Everyone's talking about it. But I think it's a great insight to say whether are you using it to make your customers' experience better, or are you using it to say that you have it? And I mean, you can pretty quickly, and I would think the person who's purchasing the software would be able to distinguish, like they're just saying AI because it's a cool thing to do, rather than is it enabling me to do my job better? Is it enabling my company to be more successful? And so maybe you don't even need to talk about it. It's just you are making people more successful, rather than just saying, just sprinkling AI every, third sentence or whatever it is. So,
Yeah. I feel like, and maybe I'm really close to it. But we're reaching that AI burnout point. Like
right,
we went through with Web3.
right,
Um, everyone had um, everyone had their NFTs, and like,
right,
what
right,
was
right,
the real value? And it was like stupid euphoria. I
right,
th- I think personally, I think Web3, its day is coming, and I
right,
think the underlying kind of components in there are, um, will, maybe not as explosively efficient as AI, but the but it has the ability to solve a lot of the problems that you and I and others deal with on a day-to-day basis,
right,
because it gives us more of a one-to-one correlation on some things. And so we haven't cracked that nut yet, because we've been so focused on the bright shiny object piece. But as people start to invest more time and energy trying to figure out how to make that stuff work, it'll unlock that.
yeah,
From an AI standpoint, it's new and hot,
right,
because somebody wrote an article, because Chat GPT launched, and now it's all this cool stuff. But AI's been around for decades, and we've been chasing this. And I'm blanking on the name of the book, but there's a great book that like really unpacks like um, the story and the origin of AI, and how we've been trying to figure this out. And it's, taking the time to kind of understand some of these things, regardless of what industry you're in, what role you're in, I think does a really good job of, or really helps you kind of see through that bright shiny piece and
mhm,
understand, whether you're the CEO or CFO or COO trying to guide an organization through good times and bad, or if you're a more junior employee that's trying to figure out how we can, embed this technology or use this skill to help further what we're doing, I think that's going to make you more marketable, more employable, and continue to add value to your organization and others over time. So, yeah.
I mean, it's a great point, and it's interesting. I mean, I think AI, it's interesting. I mean, a few years ago, everyone was talking about big data, and it's like that was like the buzz term, and it's not. I mean, obviously, it's had a huge impact, but it's just not buzzy anymore. And so people aren't talking about it, and so now it can go do what needs to happen. And I'm sure the same thing, like AI is obviously going to be very impactful, but right now it's just the word that everyone's using.
I mean, it was, Al Gore had the information superhighway, and like I'm still waiting for that. When's that going to come around?
Exactly. Exactly. That's right. What speaking of data, what would you say, like for organization, what's the best approach to take? Like, where should data be used? How to utilize it to make decisions around growth?
I approach it from a bottom up and a top down. Like, I think data belongs in every conversation. Like, even the storytelling piece, I like to use data to drive those insights. And so, like, stepping into Ceipal, I wanted to understand what the unit economics were.
Right.
And so the more I understood that, then I could unpack and figure out, okay, what do we need to do to help drive that growth?
Mm-hmm.
And we're sitting here in December. We're on Ceipal's on a Jan 1 fiscal, so we're doing budgeting and planning and stuff, and setting our targets for the year. It's where do we want to be? How do we want to get there? It's building it from the bottom up, right, and understanding what the driving KPIs are underneath that. There's a lot of data. There's a lot of things that we could collect and measure, but what's the important stuff? And whether it's new customer acquisition, whether it's customer retention, and using that to kind of ground our strategies and say, if you're a PE led or VC backed organization, they may say they want you to grow this percentage next year. Okay, well, let's put that through the litmus test. Like, does it make sense? What's it going to take to do that? Is it yes, we want to have stretch goals, but is it achievable? And what is it going to take from marketing, from sales, from customer success and support to be able to deliver that? What is churn and customer retention look on the back end? Or how many holes are in the bottom of the bucket? And understanding those pieces then help you level set the strategy from the top down. So we could say we want to grow 30%, and we want to be the number one talent software company. I'm making all this stuff up, but the number one talent software company in the business, and we want to have 25% market share. Well, what does all of that mean? Is that all doable? And not having that data and those core unit pieces underneath, without it, you're just kind of blowing in the wind. You're making stuff up. And one of the things that I think you and I've seen with the organizations that we've worked with over the last several years, those days are gone. We need to, you need to be profitable. You need to have or be on a path to profitability. And a lot of the right sizing, a lot of the price increases, a lot of the shifts that organizations are doing are in an effort to move in that direction, because those unit economics are starting to come to the surface, and people are finally starting to talk about what it, can you be profitable,
right?
And how do you get there? And I think that's ultimately healthy. It sucks in some regard, but it's
yeah, absolutely. All right, so last question for you. We're heading into 2024. A lot of people will be doing their planning. do you have one piece of advice you'd give to people to say, like, this is something you should look at to help grow your business in the coming year?
Yes, the one thing that I've walked into CPAL with being an even bigger believer in,
Yeah.
and we touched on it a little bit, is that personality-led, employee-led branding component.
Yes.
Engaging your founder, your C-suite folks in that marketing, branding, storytelling
Right. Right.
piece.
I love it.
Um, that is going to be look for that to be a key component of CPAL's story. And I think the organizations that start to leverage that even more are the ones that are going to have a better year than most
Right. Right.
in
Right.
2024. Now, it doesn't mean that every employee needs to be posting and needs to have their personal brand and do all of these other things, but it's those that figure out how to, there's my coworker, how to engage. He's going to be part of our uh,
I love it.
getting folks involved, and whether it's liking, whether it's commenting, but it's also about that shared vision.
Right.
And the more people in the organization that buy into it and add their own voice to the dialogue,
Right.
the better off every organization is going to be. So that's what we're doing, and I share that with as my kind of nudge for others
And
to
it's
invest.
That's great. And one of the big conversations now is in this AI world, how do you distinguish your brand? And what a better way to do it than bringing the people into it? So you can't just go into Chat GBT and say, make this authentic. Like, that comes from your employees. It comes from your executive team. What a way. I mean, that's a great point on how to distinguish your organization from anything else, or something that was just artificially generated. I think that's a great
Yeah,
point.
yeah, yeah. And it's gonna have far-reaching impact from referrals, from customer retention, from how you navigate through the evolving world of SEO, to any number of facets up and down the line. So
All right, well, great insight, man. I appreciate your time today. It was great talking with you. And we'll look forward to having future conversations. I can't wait to see what 2024 holds for CPAL too. I'm very
awesome.
excited. All right,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Can never forget.